Principal. Hello students, it's your history teacher and I'm here with another online lecture. Now the last lecture of the unit, Ancient Greece. This lecture will be about legacy of ancient Greeks. Legacy je odkaz alebo dedičstvo. To znamená, čo nám tá civilizácia zanechala. There are really many things that the ancient Greeks were responsible for. For example, they founded the Western civilization. So this means our civilization, European civilization. So they established the basics for what do we know as European civilization. They also came up with the name of the continent, Europa, so Europe. And you already know that it's from a legend, Europa and a bull. The very important part of our Western civilization and of our today's system is democracy. You know that ancient Greeks recognized many different types of governments. So for example, democracy, tyranny, sophocracy, oligarchy, aristocracy, and so on. But the democracy is the most important for us, because it's the rule for the people and by the people. Everyone who is in the age, so he or she is an adult and is the citizen of the state, can vote. So everybody has the same voice. It doesn't matter if he or she is rich or poor, black or white, has a university title or not, everybody has the same voice in the election. The next part of the legacy is trial by jury. Inak po slovensky je to súd porotov. This system is very typical for the United States. I suppose that you've seen a lot of movies where there was trial by jury. So this means that there are more people of different occupations and they are deciding about the final sentence. Okay, so the lawyers need to persuade the jury for their arguments. Pretože súd porotov je súd, kde sú vybraní ľudia vlastne rôznych profesí a títo rozhodujú o tom rozsudku, ktorý padne. Takže tí právnici, advokáti musia presvedčiť porotu. Sú to ľudia rôznych sociálnych tried, rôznych povolaní, rôzneho vzdelania a vlastne majú zastupovať akoby ľud. Čiže je to tiež prejav demokracie. The next point is Chalcoghatia. We haven't mentioned this one before. And this is part of the life of ancient Greeks because Chalcoghatia was the principle that the Greeks were living according to. It is balance between physical and mental qualities. So this means that person has to care for his soul and for his body as well, because these two sides are of the same importance. So you need to be healthy to keep your body in good shape, but also your mind. So you also need to study, learn, read, and have high morals. Čiže ide o rovnováhu tela a duše. A podľa tejto rovnováhy máte rozvíjať obidve svoje stránky. Chalcoghatia bola ale často aj zle chápaná tak, pretože pokiaľ ste si mysleli, že všetci žijú na základe Chalcoghatie, často sa mohlo stať, že človeka, ktorý sa možno stará o tú svoju telesnú stránku, ste posudzovali aj za dobrého, pretože ste predpokladali, že rozvíja obe. Ale nie vždy teda všetci dodržiavali na 100% tento princíp. And for the architecture, the most important thing are the columns, alebo teda stĺpy. Napíšte si to aj na to, áno, to slovo, stĺpy, columns. So we know Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns. I suppose you've heard of them. I do not have the pictures of the columns there in the presentation, but I want you to search for these columns, okay, and put it to your notes, or you can draw it, whatever, it's up to you. I just want you to know how these particular columns looked like. Okay, so Doric, it was the very basic one. Ionic had just a very simple pattern when there was something what we call volute. And the last one was Corinthian column, which had kind of like floral patterns. It is also in the background of this presentation. So this one is Corinthian. Okay, so one more time. I want you to draw or find the pictures of Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian columns and put it to your portfolio. Okay, so Doric, Ionic, Corinthian columns, this is important. And part of the architecture were also sculptures, alebo teda sochy. The most famous sculpture was Discobolus by Myron. Myron was sculptor, and Discobolus is name of the particular sculpture. And I suppose everyone of you has seen this statue. So Discobolus is the sportsman, so man who is just about to throw a disc. Áno, určite naozaj ste to všetci videli niekde na obrázku v encyklopédii. Je to teda napriahnutý človek, športovec, ktorý práve ide hádzať disk, je v takom podrepe a má napriahnutú ruku, ktorej drží ten disk. Taktiež si túto fotku môžete pozrieť. Nemusíte si ju priamo dávať do tých poznámok, ale chcela by som aspoň, aby ste si to možno pozreli. So, Discobolus. We can say that the Greek architecture was very innovative because they were really specific about the anatomy of a human's body. Okay, so you could see every muscle in the body. So for example, this Discobolus was the statue that was like in the move. So this man was depicted with every muscle in his body active. Okay, so this is really specific about Greek sculptures. The next point is drama, so theater plays, and they developed the basic genres of drama, tragedy and comedy. For example, Sophocles and Euripides were two writers of such dramas. For example, Sophocles wrote a play Antigona. So you will learn about that on your Slovak language lesson. Philosophy, that is mother of all sciences, was also developed in ancient Greece. The most important philosophers were Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. We know that Aristotle was the teacher of Alexander the Great. So these three are the most important thinkers of, we can say, the whole ancient history. When we are at the history, Herodotus was ancient Greek, and he was the father of history. Also, his student, Thucydides, was the first real historian, we can say. It's the first one that really used his historical method in his research. For the medicine, it was Hippocrates, and we know there's like Hippocrates oath, čiže prísaha Hippokratova, ktorú skladajú lekári, vlastne keď začnú vykonávať svoje povolanie. Čiže aby ste mohli byť lekárom v praxi po vlastne svojej univerzite a po tej praxi, ktorú urobíte, tak musíte zložiť Hippokratovú prísahu. The next point, and very well known, were the Olympics. It was an athletic competition in Olympia. That's why it's called the Olympics, because it was in the city-state called Olympia. And the first Olympics happened in 776 BC, and they also established the tradition that it was happening every 4 years. During this athletic competition, all wars between the city-states were prohibited. So this means every war, every battle had to stop when there was this athletic competition. So it had also this great perspective, that at least for this period, everyone stopped fighting and they were just competing in sports. But during the ancient Olympics, only Greek-speaking males could participate, so no foreigners. It was nothing like nowadays when there are representatives of all countries from the whole world, but the Olympics were just for the Greeks. So there were people from Olympia, from Athens, from Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, and so on. And apart from that, they had to be just Greeks, they had to be just men. So no women. Women had still not very well positioned, and also there was other reason why women could not participate in the games, and that was because these Greek-speaking males were competing naked. So when you wanted to participate in the Olympics, you could not have any sporting clothes or something like that. You just had to compete naked completely. Also, no, not all of the sports that from the today's Olympics were in ancient Greece. They could participate in running, chariot racing, že to sú tie vozy. Áno, ako sme si hovorili, že vlastne koňmi ťahané vozy, také, na ktorých len stoja. A má to vlastne len také dve kolesa a ťahajú ich kone. Boxing. It was like primitive boxing, we can say. They didn't have such gloves as we have now. The wrestling and the pentathlon. So 5 sports together as like one discipline. And this was running, wrestling, long jump, javelin throw and discus throw. Čiže pokiaľ si zoberieme zo všetkých športov, bol tam beh, závody na vozoch, boxovanie, wrestling, ten pentatlon, ktorý sa skladal z behu, wrestlingu, skoku do diaľky, ďalej súťažili v hode oštepom a v hode diskom. So this ancient athletic competition was just renewed in modern times. They also came up with the first alphabet with vowels that they developed from the Phoenician alphabet. So the Phoenician alphabet was the one that was the basic for what we use today, but Greeks developed it and they added the vowels. Vowels, pokiaľ by ste nevedeli, sú samohlásky. And the very last point of legacy of ancient Greeks is literature. I mentioned drama, philosophy, history, medicine, but now I mean just stories like novels. For example, Iliad and Odyssey by Homer were part of literature, but also Greek mythology. So this legend and stories like about Europa and Bull, but they had also many others about the ancient Greek gods because they had polytheistic religion and they worshipped many gods. And there was something really specific about ancient Greek gods. There we have them. I suppose you know some of them. For example, Zeus, that carried Europa on his back when he transformed himself into a bull, and they had son Minos. Okay, so this Zeus. Also, you should know Poseidon, who was the god of the seas, and he changed Minos' son into Minotaur. Also, you've probably heard about Aphrodite, so she was the goddess of the beauty and love, and some of you maybe know all of them. What I want you to remember about Greek gods is that they were not like the gods of the other religions. You know, for example, Christian God and Islamic God and God in Judaism. In these world religions, God is considered to be perfect. You know, that He's everywhere. He's everything good. You know, so like He is just perfect. But ancient Greek gods were more human-like. So they were in the fact very imperfect. They were just, we can say, people who had some kind of powers. And they also made a lot of mistakes. Greek gods were living on the mountain called Mount Olymp, and they were having fun there. They were having really great feasts, hostiny, and they were playing with humans on the earth just like with figures. So they were well known for interfering into the lives of ordinary people and playing with their lives. You know, for example, in the Iliad, Aphrodite, Hera, and Athene had an argument which one of them is the fairest one. So like the most beautiful, the nicest, and like the best. They chose ordinary man, whose name was Paris, to decide which one of them is the fairest. Every one of these goddess promised him something when he will choose her. Aphrodite promised this young boy named Paris love of the most beautiful woman on the earth. Okay, so just ordinary women. This was Helen of Troy. Of course, he chose her, and that's how the Trojan War started, because this Paris stole wife of the Mycenaean king and brought Helen with him to his hometown, Troy, in modern-day Turkey, in Asia Minor. Okay, so this was just an example. I wanted to show you that these gods usually were interfering into lives of the commoners. Also Zeus, you know, he just chose ordinary girl, Europa, who was princess. He kidnapped her and had child with her, even though Hera was his wife. So in this mythology, they were just picturing these gods as human beings with their imperfections, just like the humans are. Okay. And here I have the final picture for this topic, and it's the picture called philosophy, and you have there the biggest minds of the ancient world. So the philosophers, you can see Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato in the center. You can see also the Greek architecture, how it looked like, and so on. So I think this one is very good to describe how the ancient Greeks were. Okay, as long as this is the last topic, I will also do very quick revision what you need to know for the test. Well, again, to remember what the geography of the ancient Greece was like. So they had really mountainous land. It was not very suitable for the agriculture. They mostly used the sea, and also the land of Greece was consistent of the Balkan and Peloponnesus peninsulas, islands in Aegean Sea and west coast of Asia Minor. Greek tribes came in 3 waves, 2000 BC, Achaeans, Ionians, and Dorians, but Greeks altogether called themselves Hellenes. Before these 3 Greek tribes came, there were 3 cultures: Cycladic, Minoan, and Mycenaean. The most important for us are Minoan and Mycenaean. So I want you to know really the basic things about each of these civilizations. Okay, so about Minoan civilization, legend about Zeus and Europa, so about Bull, how they had Sun Minos, that in the capital city Knossos, there was found a huge labyrinth in a palace. It was excavated by Sir Arthur Evans. There were frescoes everywhere, which are paintings. They worshipped Mother Goddess. Minotaur was the, you can say, monster that was hiding in labyrinth according to the legend. They used linear A-writing, and their civilization collapsed because of some natural causes, so it could be either volcano or violence from Greek tribes. Mycenaean period and Mycenaean civilization, they were on the Peloponnesus Peninsula. They were formed by the Achaeans, so the very first Greek tribe that came into the Greece. And they established cities: Mycenae, Thebes, Athens, Sparta, and Tiryns. They had very highly organized kingdoms with thick walls. They had many fortresses, and inside the palace there was Megaron, which was hall, and it was something like living room. So really in the center, it was surrounded by 4 columns. They were really influenced by Minoan culture. They also worshipped the same goddess, Mother Goddess. They used linear B writing that was deciphered by Michael Ventris. Minoan linear A was never deciphered. About this period, we had source epic poems written by Homer, Iliad, and Odyssey, and Iliad is about Trojan War. This story was used by an archaeologist, Henrik Schliemann, to find the lost city of Troy, and it is said that he really found it. We don't know if it is actual Troy, but there are some signals that it really can be, and it is in modern day Turkey. This culture was destroyed by the Dorians. The Dark Age was during the Homeric period, and it's called like that because there were many wars. During that period, linear B writing that Mycenaeans used was forgotten, and it was the period of stagnation because of these wars and Dorian invasion. So the trade declined, and people lived just in small farming communities, so they did not develop. During this period also the Great Greek colonization happened, and the Greeks spread all around the Mediterranean. Forms of the government, so you should remember all of these: monarchy, oligarchy, aristocracy, timocracy, sophocracy, politeia, tyranny, and democracy. Archaic period was the period when city-states, police, Athens and Sparta really got to the power. Athens, they were located in the region called Attica. They were created by the tribe of Ionians that were unified by Theseus, and the Athenians had problem with slavery that was caused by the Great Greek colonization. There was danger of revolt. People who were living in the mainland Greece could not compete with the Greeks that were living in more fertile lands, and that's why they usually went bankrupt and they became slaves. Solon tried to solve this problem with reforms. He outlawed debt slavery, and freed those who had been enslaved before. Also, all citizens were allowed to participate in the assembly, and this constitution divided citizens into 4 classes according to their property. That's why it was based on the principles of democracy. So this means that the wealthiest people were in the groups of strategy because they were commanders, so they had most of the property, and so when they had to go to war, they also had the highest military rank. The second group was cavalry, third group hoplites, the heavy infantry, and fourth group Thetes, or the ordinary troops, so the poorest group. After unsuccessful reforms, the tyrant gained control, so there was tyrant Pisistratos. During his rule, the aristocracy was weakened. Even though it was tyranny, country developed during this period. After the reign of the tyrants was gone, Cleisthenes began real democracy in Athens. He made that because he stopped to pay political functions. He made a new constitution in which he organized people into units called demes. So in every unit there were 10 people. These were grouped into 10 tribes, not by property, so it was not longer democracy, but by the place of living, by their address. In every tribe, they elected 1 strategist and 1 polemarchos, who was commander. Legislation was in hand of Bol, which was a council of 500 members, out of which 50 were chosen by lot, so randomly, and Ecclesia was the assembly of all citizens. Then we have 2 terms you should remember, and this is agora, where people met and talked about politics and public matters, and ostracism. This was when citizens in Ecclesia could send one of them to exile for 10 years in case he was seen as a threat to democracy. This was misused. This meant that you could write name of someone on the piece of pottery, úlomok nejakej keramiky, and when this name will be there for 10 times, this person would be sent to exile. So he would be banished from the country. The only ones who could participate in public life were men. This was the strong patriarchy or misogyny, which means that only men control public things. Sparta was created by the tribe of the Dorians in Laconia region. There were 3 groups of inhabitants in Sparta. These were hoplites, who were the ruling class, we can say the minority that was ruling. Only these were Spartans. They were aristocracy. Then Perioikoi, who were foreigners but were free. They could not be in politics, but they could live freely. And the third group were Helots. These were hereditary slaves. They had no rights. Spartans, so the hoplites, did not work. They were only warriors, and the ones who did jobs for them were Perioikoi and Helots. So Perioikoi were mostly like craftsmen and like these free occupations, and Helots were slaves. Spartan government consisted of 2 kings, Gerousia, so the council of noble elders over the age of 60, an assembly that was created by all male Spartans over the age of 30, and 5 ephors that were elected by the assembly. Sparta founded the Peloponnesian League against Athens' Delian League. There were some interesting facts about Sparta, so I would just mention they had iron currency because they wanted to prevent business with other cities. In schools, they honored successful stealing. They held public contests in whipping. Every man soldier belonged to a special dining club. Women had better position in Sparta than in Athens. And the most valuable part of armor in Sparta was the shield. During the classical period, the Greco-Persian wars were happening, so between Achaemenid Empire, Persia, and Greek city-states. Everything happened because Persia was expanding in Asia Minor and conquered the city-states of Miletus, Ephesus, Smyrna, and Halicarnassus. Mainland Greece supported police to fight the Persians, but this revolt was suppressed, and this was used as a pretext to organize the expeditions against mainland Greece. The first expedition was wrecked in storm, but the second one ended in the battle. This battle was Battle of Marathon, but it was only between, we can say, Athenians and Persians, because Spartans could not fight due to religious reasons. They had religious festival. Athenians won anyways because of brilliant tactics of strategist Miltiades, and there was this famous runner Phidippides who died after 42 kilometers run with the message "We won" from Marathon to Athens. On his honor, there's marathon run organized also in the Olympics nowadays. The second successful expedition, led by Xerxes, ended in the Battle of Thermopylae. That is well known for the tragic death of 300 Spartans who defended the pass of Thermopylae. They were defeated after the betrayal. All of these Spartan soldiers died with their king Leonidas, and after this, Persians were able to get into the Athens and they destroyed them. Greeks did not give up and they led their army to the Battle of Salamis. This was naval battle on the sea. Greek fleet was led by Themistocles and Greeks won. After that, the rest of Persian army was defeated in the Battle of Plataea and the Peace of Calais was signed. After the Greco-Persian Wars, the Golden Age of Athens was established under the rule of strategist Pericles, who established the democracy. There were diets, so salary for political function. There was a Helaia, court by jury, and ecclesia, principal assembly. Athens were reconstructed. For example, Parthenon on Acropolis was built. Also, thick walls between city and its harbor Piraeus, because it was not very good fortificated before. And Athens also dominated in the Delian League. But Sparta dominated in the Peloponnesian League. This led to the conflicts between former allies. They had some problems between them from the Greco-Persian Wars. So even though it was not so long ago when the wars stopped in ancient Greece, they started another war between each other. This was called Peloponnesian War. This was civil war or like fratrical struggle because both of the city-states were Greek. Athens were stronger in the naval fleet and Spartans had stronger heavy infantry. First, the Athenians were successful, but the plague broke out. Sparta used this for their advantage, but they were still not able to defeat them, so they allied with Persia, defeated the Athenians in the Battle of Aegospotami. But we call that Pyrrhos victory, and you should know what the Pyrrhos victory is. So it's the victory with great costs on all sides. After that, democracy in Athens was suspended and the rule of 30 tyrants was established. Sparta was the most powerful police that ruled over Athens, Thebes, Argos, Corinth, but these revolted against Sparta in Corinthian War and ended the rule of Sparta. Hellenistic period was the period when the ancient Greece was, we can say, annexed by the kingdom of Macedonia. This was the northern neighbor of ancient Greece, ruled by Philip II of Macedon, who was soon succeeded by his son Alexander, soon to be known as Alexander the Great. He was taught by Aristotle. He was young, just 20 years old, smart and skilled commander. And after the Battle of the Granicus, he also conquered the cities in Asia Minor, Egypt. Then he defeated Persian army of Darius III in the Battle of Gaugamela. Over his realm, which was quite huge for such short time, he established many cities named Alexandria. That was quite confusing. Alexander the Great led his army from Mesopotamia, Persia to India, but he died in the age of 32 in Babylon. He did not have any children, so that's why he divided his empire among his successors. So Egypt was given to Ptolemy and Asia to Seleucus. This period is called like that because the Greek influence was brought to Asia. We call that mix of culture. So the Hellenistic Greece was a little bit different than the Greece before because there was clash of the Eastern culture and Western culture. This is Alexander the Great. And then you have the most important legacies of ancient Greece. I just told you in the beginning. So that's it. You should know just very basic points. What did they give us? The very important thing is to find Doric, Ionic and Corinthian columns, because I will put one of these columns to your test, okay? And I will ask which column it is, okay? So I hope you watch these videos and you will know. Also, I would like you to write to your notes 5 ancient Greek gods with their powers, okay? So for example, Zeus was leader of all gods. He was father of the gods and he was the god of the storm and lightning, okay? Poseidon was the god of the sea and so on. So you can choose 5 of them that you like and you can just write it to your notes so you will know in the future, okay? That's it. And it should be no problem for you if you studied on regular basis. But anyway, when you have problems with something, you can contact me anytime and I can explain it to you. But you have everything in your notes, in the presentation, in the videos. And the last thing was just that pictures I wanted to put into the notes, so the Greek columns, okay? So that's just one thing that is actually not there as a picture, okay? So you should be fully prepared when you do that. So that's it. Study hard, stay healthy, and bye.